Hey folks, how you doing? My name's Dave, and I've been making software for the last 25 years. And we're going to be looking at some SQL Server analytical functions. We're going to be looking at rank and dense rank. But as we do this, I'm not just going to show you how they work, but I'm also going to take some extra time and show you all the code you might have to write if you didn't have analytical functions. And then you'll see why they're so important and why they're so cool and why you have to learn them. And if you want to get a SQL job, you have to know them. You just have to know them. So the first thing I'm going to do is just show you this table that we have. We have an employee table, okay? It's got the employee, their salary, their department, their gender. So I'm just going to run this. So it's a simple table, really simple table. In real life, this would be a lookup. It wouldn't be the name of a department. It would actually probably be an ID, but that's not really what we care about right now. What I want to do is I want to show you what the rank function does. So with the rank function, I added this to the select statement. It says rank, and then it says over, so this over, and then in here it says order by salary descending. What it's going to do, and then rank here is just the name of the field. What it's going to do is it's going to start an ordering starting with the number 1, and then it's going to keep going higher, but there's a few rules. Order by salary descending means I'm going to have the biggest salaries at the top of the list, all the way down to the smaller ones. I mean, at this point, you all get what order by and descending mean, so that's fine. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, now notice what it did. Let me pull this up a little bit. So we got Tony Macaroni and top of sellers from the sales department. We've got a male and a female. Oh, they both make $898,000. So look at what rank did. Rank said, well, they're both in first place. But then notice what it did when we got to Gerple Purple, who makes $556,000. Or is that Gerple Purple? I don't know. Anyway, instead of giving them a rank of 2, it gave them the rank of 3 because they really are the third record. 1, 2, 3. So see, what happens with rank is it skips over, which is really cool. And there's times you may want to do that, or there's times you may not want to do that. When we go over dense rank in a while, it's a little different. Dense rank, the big difference between rank and dense rank is that here there's a hole, there's nothing with a 2. Dense rank would have made this a 2 instead. Now, which one is better, which one is right? Well, it all depends. You got to ask your boss or your customer, or basically whoever's paying you. And here's the reality. The first time you ask them, they probably have no idea. So if you're smart, you'll probably use rank and dense rank at the same time, in the same query, just to show them the difference, and then you'll look like a hero. But by the way, I should tell you at the get-go, this video is going to be a little longer than a typical 10-minute video because I'm also going to be going over the wrong way to do this. You can always get this information without using rank. But when you see how much more work it is, you'd say, why would I ever do that? Okay, so I'm going to flip over to another query window. And here again, so I'm just going to run this. We've already seen this. It has the rank. But now I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to go through this slowly. And there's a bunch more code here that you typically wouldn't want to have to write. But the first thing I'm going to do is this. Let me uncomment this. Let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm adding a field called ID equals identity int. What that's going to do is it's actually going to give me a primary key. It's going to be an auto number. But you can only do that if you select it into a temp table. All of a sudden, this is a big problem because by doing this, at least in SQL Server, I have to use something called the temp database. And when you use the temp database, that may or may not be okay in the system that you're on. But if a lot of different databases are on there and they all use the temp database, it could be problematic. So anyway, I'm selecting all the 4 fields, all these 4 fields, okay, into this table, but I'm also giving it an auto number and I'm calling it ID, okay? But then I'm ordering by salary descending, and then I have to select from the temp table. See, if I just do this by itself, it'll just tell me that, but it won't show me anything. See, but if I select from it, well, actually, let me show you what happens if I try to run this again. This isn't really part of what I wanted to show you, but I'm going to get an error. And that's because in this session with the server, I can't recreate the table because it's already there. There is actually a table in the temp database, and the hash mark TMP is actually an alias for it. So let me drop that table. Okay, now let me show you this whole part. Okay, so I do this. I'm going to be recreating that temp table, and I'm going to do a select. Okay, so now here's what we have. We have this ID, and this gives us, it kind of ranks everything, except it's not really like what we have up here. And oh, you know what? Let me uncomment this, otherwise we're going to have problems. And let me just drop it. I'm hitting F5. Okay. And then let me go back up here and uncomment this. Now, I'm going to run both of these together. So, you know, the main four fields are in the same order in both tables, but here we have rank of 1, 1, 3. And then here we have 1, 2, 3. Can you see a way that we can take this data set and finally come up with this over here? And there is a way to do that. But what we have to do, and this gets really hairy because if you write this code and know what you're doing, it's fine. But if you have somebody else who's trying to read your code later on, they may have no idea what you're doing unless they're really smart. But if they're smart enough to figure out what you're doing here and up there and all this other stuff, then they'd probably be smart enough to just use rank. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be selecting everything from the temp table. See, from the temp table. But I'm also naming the temp table. I'm calling it T1. And normally you would never need to do that. But I'm also selecting the minimum ID, the minimum of this field, from the temp table. So I'm actually kind of joining, I'm not really joining it on itself. Well, I kind of am in this line here. It's not really a join, it's kind of like a, sort of like a cross query. Anyway, so I'm selecting the minimum ID from the same temp table, but a different version of it. This is a different instance of the table. That's why it's called T2. It's almost like having two identical tables, and we're comparing them. But where I'm saying where the salary from this table equals the salary of this table, but then I'm taking the minimum ID. What that means in real life is that if the salary is $8.98, you know, it could be like either of these records is $8.98, but it's going to look for the minimum ID in this table where it's $8.98. So both of these records, when I do this over here, they're both going to come up with an ID of 1. So here, basically, here's what the whole thing looks like when I rerun it. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of this record set because otherwise we're going to have 3 record sets to look at, or result sets. So basically what we're going to see when we run this now is we're going to get this, the thing that we saw from the beginning where the rank goes 1, 1, 3. And then down here, after making the temp table, and then I turned off, you know, selecting the rows from that, then what I'm going to do is I'm selecting everything from that temp table, plus I'm sort of self-joining it, and it's going to do some funny stuff with looking up the ID. And here's what it looks like. So let me run all this. And voila. We got Tony Macaroni, $898,000 sales mail. Tony Macaroni, $898,000 sales mail. And look at the rank. 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what we did is we emulated using the rank function or the rank analytical function without having to use it. Now that may seem like a big victory, but it's really not, because notice what's going on. I'm going to scrunch these results down. We don't need to look at these anymore. Here's the difference. Instead of just writing this code, which really, if you think about it, it's just this code. Instead of just using the rank function, you know, with over order by salary descending as rank, I had to dump all this stuff into a temp table. And then I had to select from it while I was testing and developing and everything. And then I had to go through here and I had to like rejoin it to itself and pull some magic and everything. And then I had to drop the table down here. So basically what happened was I had to do all this, instead of doing this. And that's outrageous. And that's why when you go on an interview for a job that is heavily, you're doing SQL programming, they don't care if you can do this. They only want you to do this and know how to do it. Because if you know how to do this, you already understand all of this. And the thing is, it takes so much less time to do this than it does this. You're not messing around with the temp database. You're not doing all that stuff. You know, you're not making and by the way, if you had to comment this code, eventually there's going to be so many comments and so much unnecessary code, it's not all going to fit on your monitor without paging down, and that's a real problem. This is why these SQL jobs that are out there, you have to know analytical functions. Look, just this one thing. And which is more readable, do you think? This or this? And by the way, if some, like I say, if some other, new person has to come by, like, a year later with this code that you wrote and you're on vacation, but, they have your cell phone number, do you really want them calling you while you're trying to ski down a mountain because you wrote this when maybe they would have understood this? Okay, so you see how doing rank, you could emulate it. You could do the same thing by writing code without using this. But why would you? It would be crazy. It would be really crazy. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to show how you can use dense rank. And then with dense rank, that's the different one where there's no holes. Instead of going, let me pull this back up. Instead of going 1, 1, 2, it doesn't care that two people tied for first. It's going to go, excuse me, instead of going 1, 1, 3 and skipping over 2, it's going to go 1, 1, 2. And if you're already thinking the way I'm thinking, you're going to realize doing dense rank is actually going to be more difficult than doing rank. Rank was actually easy for what we're going to do. We're also going to be doing dense rank, but then after that, for the faint of heart, you're probably not going to watch because we're going to show partition by. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see when we try to do stuff without using the analytical functions, we're going to have code that, like, is going to probably be like 9 feet tall, and it's just going to be ridiculous. So anyway, fasten your seatbelt, pause the video, go make a cup of coffee, go have some dinner, and I'll see you right back here in a minute. Okay, so now what we have, we're looking at the same. We're going to be getting the same results, but we're going to be doing rank and dense rank. And the thing is, you can have those two fields side by side. SQL doesn't care. But look at the difference. We've talked about it, but seeing is believing. Okay, so here we have two people tied for first place. We know that now. We've talked about it. But with rank, it skips right to 3 because it really is the third person. But you may be in an organization or have a boss or a customer where they don't like that and they still want this to be a 2. You can come up with all the real world arguments why you would want to do it one way or the other, but a smart programmer will give it to their, whoever's asking for it both ways and look like a hero. Because you know what? You can ask them and explain the differences and they won't know, or they'll look at you confused and they'll be like, let me get back to you. 2 weeks later, they're going to say, what's the status? And you're like, you never told me what you wanted, right? So just do it both ways for them. But here, so it goes first place, second place, or a rank of 1, 1, and 2. That's why they call it dense rank, because it's denser, because it fills the holes. This is like Swiss cheese, maybe, but this is dense. There's no holes in it. So it's just a different kind of logic. But now here's the thing. Trying to emulate dense rank, and we're not gonna emulate rank in this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comment this out. You hit the save button. It won't affect what we're doing, but just so I have that. Okay. So basically, what we're gonna do is do this, and then we're gonna want to have another row, or when we're gonna run a similar query to this down below. I'm gonna write something else. I'll pause this so you don't have to watch me. Groping through that. But we want to get another result set that looks just like this, so that it basically goes 1, 1, 2, 3. And this is not going to be as easy as doing the rank. This is going to be a little trickier, okay? But I just want to show you that it can be done, but why it would be ridiculous ridiculous to do it that way. That would have been like the old-fashioned way before they had these things, you know, where you really had to think. But this is like this these functions are such a gift. Anyway, so let's move on to that. Okay, so I was able to do this a little quicker than I thought, meaning with less lines of code than I would have figured. Again, let's just run through this. What we're trying to do is get 112 for the dense rank, as opposed to the 113 when we did just plain old rank. So let me go over to this next code window and go back up here. All right, so anyway, we've got the same thing here. Let me just run it, okay? Let me explain what I had to do here to get this to work. There's a couple of pieces to it. Basically, well, let me just show you. I'm going to be dropping stuff into a temp table. And let me just go down to the bottom and make sure that I drop this temp table so I can keep running it with impunity. Okay, so let me move this up here. Let me run these both together. Now it's not finished yet, but all I'm doing in this first section, this is just a select statement from the temp table that I'm making, but this whole chunk here, what I'm first doing, I'm making a subquery, or actually it's what's called a derived table. By the way, when you use these, they're way faster than anything. They're faster than table variables. They're faster than temp tables. A derived table, it must just go straight in, you know, memory. But I don't think it even goes on the heap. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, let the server worry about how it handles that. But the bottom line is, I'm just selecting the distinct salary from the employee, and I'm calling this derived table sal. It only has one field, which is salary. But then what I'm doing out here is I'm selecting an ID, and then also the salary from the derived table. So it's going to have an ID, like it is ID, 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 ID. Okay, but there's only one reference of each of these, so this is going to be a layup. This is going to be easy. And then I'm ordering everything by the salary, descending, of course, you know, highest, next highest, next highest. Okay, but the reason why I didn't just take the distinct salary and just throw it up here. In other words, why do I need this derived table anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's a great question. You cannot do distinct and give something the identity property at the same time. SQL Server, anyway, I don't know about other RDBMSs, but SQL Server will throw an error. If I tried to put distinct salary up here, which is what I need, it won't let me do the ID. It's one or the other. But that's why instead of having to make one temp table where I just did, you know, the salary, the distinct salary, and then pull that into a second temp table and added the ID, I just did it this way because it's less code. Otherwise, what would have happened is, well, it would have taken up more space. So anyway, I did it like this. But the end result, at the end of the day, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, that might have been off the screen when I was pointing at it. So this temp table, hash mark salary, it has one instance of every salary amount and an ID. So like I say, this is going to be a layup because now what we're going to do is we're just going to come back and we're going to join this table with this table. And since dense rank doesn't have any holes in it, this is going to work beautifully. It also takes forever to write it all and make sure that it works. But now I'm going to say select, you know, all four of these fields from the employee table. You know, employee, I set it to E. So E dot this and E dot that. And I'm interjoining the salary table that we created, the temp table, where its salary equals the salary in the employee table. Piece of cake. And then I'm selecting, but from this table, I'm not selecting the salary because we already have it up here. I'm selecting the ID that we made. See how handy those IDs can be? Wait a minute. Oh dear, too many spaces. Okay, not that it'll matter. Save. Okay, and then I'm going to order everything, of course, by the ID, which I'm calling dense rank. So I'm going to run this. Now, let me take away the select statement from the salary so we don't have to look at this again. We already know what that looks like. And now I run this. Let me pull it up. Da, 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 da. And so now I don't know why it's doing it like this. It's just being a pain in the neck. All right, let me pull this out here. Okay, so anyway, at the end of the day, what we have is for this one, Tony Macaroni, Tapa Sellers, Gerpel Purple, Clint Black. Tony Macaroni, Tapa Sellers, Gerpel Purple, Clint Black. And if you notice, what we have, as promised, the dense rank function itself, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have 1, whoops, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we emulated it. But see, the thing is, how great is that? Because what we have here is you could write this code, which number one is a lot faster to write. And oh, by the way, I don't know why I have this tabbed over so far. That really should look like this. But whatever. I mean, it's not going to change anything. The internet's not going to use up more electricity. Okay, so you could either write this, or, if you're getting paid by the letter, and you're not, you'll get fired if you do this. Instead of doing that one line of code in the select statement, you would have to do all this. Now, I imagine somewhere inside of SQL, there's some kind of magic in the SQL specification. This is what the database system is doing. It's probably doing something similar to this, the code that makes that happen probably looks really horrid. But anyway, you could either write all this or just this. And again, you're on vacation a year from now. You don't remember what you did for some client. How are you going to remember? You're laying out on the beach, but you're on call, so you have your cell phone. They don't have cell phone service where you went, so the office gave you a satellite phone. And now you have this really annoying developer asking you about it and explaining it to you. If you did this in the first place, it never would have been a problem because it's obvious what you're trying to do. And this is not. The person could eventually figure it out, but they're going to spend if they don't know what they're doing, they might spend an hour, hour and a half, and they still may not understand why you did that. This is a lot more clear. And remember before when we talked about, hey, if the boss doesn't know what they want, do a rank and a dense rank? Can you imagine having to write all this code here now and all the other extra code that we did before earlier in this video instead of just two nice crispy lines that look like this? It makes a huge difference. Okay, the next thing we're going to go into is partition by. And, when we have to figure, when we just do partition by, and you see how rank and dense rank work with that, it's really powerful. And this is one of the biggest things I want you to see. If you had to try to figure out on your own how to emulate a rank or a dense rank and a partition by, and you'll see what that is in a couple of minutes. If you had to write code to do that without using any analytical functions, you would probably call in sick for a month, okay? Because it wouldn't be easy. But we're going to show that next. And this is why, if I haven't gotten through to you yet on why analytical functions that are built in are so powerful, the next part will sell you, and you'll get it. You'll really get it. Okay, in this next part, we're going to show the difference between rank over order by and then rank over partition by order by. So this is what we've been doing the whole time up to this point. And we're ranking everything, but the problem is we're ranking everything, and actually, let me do this. I know you've seen it, you're probably sick of looking at it, but it's good for repetition. Let me just run this. Not what I meant to do. Is what I meant to do. All right. Oh. Yeah, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. This is not what I wanted to do. Let me just do this. Okay, hold on a sec, guys. Sorry, my bad. There's one minus sign here. Okay, so here's what we're used to see. And see, so even instructors make mistakes. But anyway, so we're back to rank 1, 2. Remember, it skips 1, it goes to 3, 4. But here's the problem. In real life, not that this isn't real life, but if you were to hand in something like this, the first time that the manager sees it, they're going to be like, oh, this isn't what I meant. And, you know, how often that happens all the time, right? But what they're going to say is, well, this is good, but it's not really helpful unless we break it down by department. And so, you know, like sales is all here just because they all make a lot of money, but then legal's here, legal's here, legal's here. But the thing is, they're like, well, I really want to see the rank per department. But here's what they don't want. They don't want 7 different queries. They don't want one result set for sales and another thing for the software guys and another thing for legal and blah, blah, blah. So they want just one result set. They want it grouped by sales, but we're not going to use a group by because we're too cool for that. But then they want the rank just by the department. So when we do this, this is the rank for the whole entire thing. But now what's really cool about this is if we do this, you'll see the difference. And by the way, the reason I pushed this so far over, I want you to see what's different here. The only thing that's different here when we do a partition by, and we're partitioning by department, what we're actually doing is making a window. Nothing to do with Windows, the operating system. It's window, it has to do with, see, like, people say analytical functions in SQL, just like they say window functions, but it's not really a window function until you partition it. And I'll show you what I mean. Someone will probably argue with me on that, try to call me out, but just take my word for it. All right, execute. Excuse me, I said execute. There we go. Now look at how cool this is. Okay, so I should have said order by 1, 2, 3, 4. Or let me just do order by 5. Just to make this more sensible. Okay, so we got the sales department. Now look at what happens here for sales. These two ranks, they're exactly the same, okay? Because we haven't done anything special yet. But look what happens. Sorry. Order by department. There we go. Okay, you know what? These results are gonna look strange if I keep this going. So let me just undo this. There we go. All right, here's what I want to show you. Now, notice how for the first 4 records, and by the way, this isn't the same 2 that tied for first place. These are advertising, not sales. This is like 32,000 and 32,000. But they just so happen to also tie. So we're used to seeing this 1, 1, 3, 4. But look what happens when we get to the next department. The rank starts over again. 1, 2, 3, 4. HR puts, you know, everything from highest to lowest here, but it puts it in order, but it breaks it down by the department. And wow, I did 4 for each department. I'm so boring. Anyway, so you see how that's so much more powerful. And think of this here as a window. And think of this here as another window. That's kind of why they call it a window function. It's not, it's a very misleading name, probably about as misleading as analytical functions. But if you want to seem really cool and get in an argument with other developers when you're at lunch, you know, just tell them it's not really a window function until you use partition by. At the least, you'll sound really smart. Okay, but now, you're probably having a nightmare by me asking this, and I'm sort of having one too. I'm having heart palpitations. How could we reproduce this field without using rank and without using over? I feel like my life is over. And without using really? And without using sorry, I did not say that. I did not say that. It just sounds like I said that. Okay, this is just, did somebody hit the insert key and not tell me? Anyway, and without using partition by, there we go. How would you do that? And when you see how much code this is, you'll make sure that you practice these every day, day and night, till you know them by heart. You know, and once you do that, you should be doing videos online too. We need the help. A lot of people don't know how to do this, and they need the help. So What we're going to do next is we're going to try to emulate this code. Notice it's one nice, tight, compact line of code. And we're going to see if we can emulate this some other way. Oh boy, it's going to be a long night. Okay, see you in a few hours. Okay, well, we made it this far. Now we're going to show what happens if you try to do all the same functionality. Just to review, we're going to do rank with partition by department on the employee table. So what we have, just like what we've been talking about, every department does its rank 1, 1, 3, 4, because these two are the same, and it skips over. And then at every department, cafeteria, it starts over. HR, it starts over. And this is really what your boss or your customer is going to want, whether it's rank or dense rank or both. But see here, the reason why we're getting it broken up like this is because we're using partition by, like we already talked about. But now, how on earth would we duplicate this functionality if we didn't have this analytical function? Oh, and let me just alter that because that'll just drive me crazy next time I look at it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is flip over to another code window, and this is just going to blow your mind. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and it's basically the same thing that we just ran. I'm going to take the results, I'm going to put them down here. I had to really do this piecemeal, so let me show you what I did. I'm going to uncomment this first chunk, and I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to take this department table, and I'm going to have the drop ready to go so I can do this multiple times. Let me explain what I'm doing. This is similar to what we did before. I'm selecting just one instance of every department from the employee table. And then from this derived table called DPT, I'm going to, outside of that, I'm going to select a primary key, an identity, if you will, and then the department into a temp table called, hashmark DEPT. And I'm ordering it by the department descending. So what we're going to see is we're going to see one record for advertising, and then it's going to have the number 1, and then one record for cafeteria, it'll have the number 2. So it's really simple. Rips, I had the cursor just on that, so it freaked out. Okay, so here we go. Now let me pull this up. So you see what it did was, it just made a simple lookup table, one instance of each of the departments in order, and it has this ID. This here is just, SQL puts this in here. That's not part of the record set, but this is. And this is going to help us later, okay? So far, let's review. We had to create this temporary table, and because we wanted to put an ID in it, we had to do a distinct, which you can't do with, doing this. This and a distinct don't work together because they're doing two completely different things, and T-SQL doesn't like it. Hence the derived table. And then we had to do a select from that, and then all the way at the bottom, we had to drop the table. Because if we don't drop the table, I can't just repeatedly do this because it'll break, because it'll say, oh, sorry, it is a temporary table, but it stays, I believe it's actually written to disk, but anyway, it stays in the system until this query window gets shut down, unless there's like an error, then it might still be there. But anyway, stays open for the session, that's why you have to keep turning it off. If you're using a stored procedure, it'll do that automatically, allegedly. Okay, if you ever get a chance, you should look at the tables inside the temp database. It may really blow your mind what they look like. But anyway, okay, so we have this. Think of it as a lookup table, but it doesn't really help us yet. So now what we're going to do is more fun stuff. I'm going to get rid of the select on this because we know what it looks like, It's basically a lookup for the departments. Okay. The next step is this. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking, we're going to create another temp table called temp, TMP. We're going to make another auto number, identity, and then we're going to take the ID. We're basically joining the employee table on the department table. So not only will each record here have, all its normal stuff, including the department, but it's also going to have the department number, which is really this number that we just dreamed up. That doesn't really exist in the database, it just exists in our query window. And we're going to basically join the employee table and department table on, of course, department. Order it by salary, the whole thing. So here's what this looks like. And by the way, I'm going to get rid of this up top. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to comment it out so we don't have to look at too many things at once. So, okay, so let's go back down here and let's see where we're at. Okay, so now, you know, this is something that now something is starting to emerge that we can work with. So we're used to seeing this information, okay? We're used to seeing this. All right, but you know, like now everybody in advertising has a department ID of 1, everybody in cafeteria has a department ID of 2. This ID is just all over the place because it just, you know, it's just not really formatted or filtered the way we need it to, or not filtered, but sorted. But we don't care about that. We don't care. We see what this looks like, but now we have to do another temp table, and this is going to seem weird. I'm going to leave this select open whilst I run this next one. And oh, by the way, wait, let me just comment that back out. I already made a mistake. Watch, this is going to get an error if I hit it again. Bam. So, because what I forgot to do is uncomment this for temp. When you're testing temp tables and playing around with them, you have to be mindful of this. Now, if I click this, I'm going to get another error on the depart. So anyway, I have to drop this before I do anything else. You could, at the top of the page, put if exists, and, you know, drop the table that way, but this is fine. Okay, so I'm going to run that again. Okay, see, told you. All right, now I'll run it. Okay, so that's basically what we just ran before, but now, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump this into yet another temp table, and it's going to be very similar, except for one thing. And before I pull the trigger on this, oh, and let me be smart and do this. So you can't uncomment those till the table gets created, because otherwise you'll get yet another error. But see if you can figure out what's going to look different about this table. You know, you probably already can figure it out in your head, but anyway, let me do this. Okay. So now, it's basically the same exact table, except the ID that got all screwy over here, because now we're doing it this way. Now I have an ID. It's not the same one as this. We didn't copy this. It's just a new one. It just happens to have the same. I could have called it ID2 or R2D2. Why would I do that? It has all this, but there's also a field called rank, which I just defaulted to -1, just as opposed to any other number, just so that it, you know, just so we can tell it's useless right now. It doesn't mean anything. So now what I'm going to do, so I have a placeholder for rank, and we're going to be building that up. So let me do this first of all. Let me lower this. Oh, if you have any questions, raise your hand. I won't see you doing that. I'm so funny. Okay, so here, right now, is where we're at. You can almost ignore that field. We don't care. Well, actually, no, that's not true. We do care about that. We're going to use it for looping purposes. This ID is going to just basically turn into a counter for us, sort of, or we're going to map a counter to this. But what we care about is this field. We're going to be writing to this field. So now, by the way, if you're ever doing a loop in SQL, and here's some good news, because you're learning analytical functions and window functions, it will seriously reduce the need for you to ever have to loop through records, and you're probably going to be really thrilled about that. Less looping, more money. Now, if you ever do have to make a loop in SQL, in T-SQL, don't ever believe the people that tell you that you have to use a cursor. You don't. A cursor is a persistent database object. If something breaks while you're using it, I'll let you research this on the side, but all you need is a while loop. I don't know why people don't use while loops instead of cursors, but the fact that you can make an identity, which is sort of like is an auto number, you can do really cool stuff like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment a whole bunch of stuff here, and then I'm going to attempt to explain it all. And, okay. So what I have here is I have two things. I have a count and a counter. The counter is just going to be like 1, 2, 3, and the count is going to be how many records are in the table, of course. And the counter is going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's all these other things I need. Like I need the department ID so I can look at stuff. I need the department count. I need the salary. And then, of course, rank. So here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to set the salary. Basically, I'm going to say while counter is less than equal to count. Here's a while loop. It starts up here, and then do it the way I show you. Don't ever do it differently. Start with begin, and then have an end, and indent everything nicely, okay? And then this is the body of the loop. The first thing I ever do is I increment the counter, because it's really fun when you're training a new person how to do something and they think, oh, this guy's going to teach me a lot, and then you make an infinite loop and you're like, wow, this is taking a long time. Yeah, it'll take a really long time, you know? You'd have to like live in the Q continuum to outlive it. Okay, so anyway, I digress. What I'm doing is I'm setting the salary equals to, and then there's this embedded select statement. Select salary from temp to where, notice ID equals the counter, which in the first case is set to 1. So basically it's looking at this first record. When I iterate through it again, it'll be looking through the second record. And the third time, it'll be looking at Jeannie McMeany's record. I just wanted to say that name. And then I'm getting the department ID, and then I'm getting the department count. But what the department count isn't how many people are in the department or how many records, but it's where how many are in the department that have a greater salary than the one we're looking at. So like, for example, if in this department, how many people have a greater salary than 32,000? 0. How many people here have a greater salary than 27,000? 2. So do you get what we're doing? As soon as we get that, the department count, you know, it's how many people you make more money in that department, then all we have to do is add the number 1 to it. Nobody beats that. Add 1. These guys get a rank of 1. How many people are beating this? 2. So add 1, and we're going to come up with 3. And that's all we have to do here. But just one thing that doesn't really have to do this. See how I'm doing this? You could do one select statement without having like a subquery, and you could say set at salary equals salary, comma, at dept ID equal, and you could select it all from the same thing. Well, actually, you couldn't really do this one with it. But do yourself a favor, do it the way I'm showing you. It's a couple more steps, but this is the ANSI approved way of doing it. And there's exotic times where you're looping differently through stuff, and if something's null, it reuses values. Just do it the way I'm showing you, and it'll never break. Okay. So when I run all this stuff, and by the way, let me do this. Let me get rid of Junior here. And then let me come up here and uncomment this little bad boy. Okay. So again, if I just run this by itself, what we want to get is 1, 2, or 1, 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to run that, and then now I'm going to let it rip with the whole thing. So we should have 2 record sets. Obviously, this one has an ID with it too. I could have gotten easily eliminated these 2 fields, but I didn't. But look at this, the rank 1, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see, we did it. We didn't have to use the analytical function of rank to get this. But here's why we're going to get fired when we show our boss how smart we are. All we needed was this one line of code. The back end of SQL that we don't even see in SQL Server and whichever other RDBMS you're using that follows the specification for rank and analytical functions does all the dirty work for you. It does all that naughty nonsense so you don't have to. But, you know, if you didn't know how to do this, don't be afraid because it says rank and then over and then partition by. You know, if you've never seen those words, don't be afraid of them, okay? You know, it's just like anything else. Try that vegetable, you probably won't. But let's review. Here's what I had to do. Instead of doing this, just that, I had to do one of those crazy lookup tables, like a select into with a derived table, so I could also use the ident and make it distinct, blah, blah, blah. And I had to select from it while I was testing it out. And then down here, we're doing something a little similar. We're joining that new lookup table with the employee table. We're adding a fresh identity to it, all that kind of stuff. And then while I was working on it, I had to select stuff. And then coming down here, basically I'm making another version of the table, and I'm putting a placeholder for the rank, and I'm resetting the identity so we can use it as a loop. And of course, while I was testing it, I had to have, that selected. I had to make sure that I could see what I was doing. And then as we come down here, then I had to do all this nonsense so we could loop through it and figure all this stuff out and finally figure out, you know, what to put in for the rank to update it to in this update statement that'll execute once for every record. And then I had to drop all three of those tables. So let's review. Let's go to the top. And I don't want to sound, I'm not trying to be overly repetitive, but seriously, this is why these are so important. Just this or all of this. And just imagine if I had to comment the code because I worked with like stupid people. It would have been like 3 or 4 screen lengths just to do this. So again, this is why if you're looking for a SQL job, you have to know this stuff. It's all they care about. It's great that you can do all this. They don't want to pay you to do all that. This takes 10 seconds, well, maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds. It depends how fast you type. But think of how long it would take to implement this and then hand it in and do something with it versus all of this. This could take somebody half an hour or more, and that's only if they've been doing this for 20 years. But if they've been doing this for 20 years, they should know how to do this. Actually, 17 years because it came out in SQL Server 2005 for T-SQL. So anyway, so there's that. The last thing that we're going to do is going to be very similar to this, but instead of rank, we're going to show dense rank. So stay tuned. In the meantime, I would go make a sandwich or go play a computer game, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. Now we're going to be looking at dense rank, and we're going to try to figure out how to emulate that without using dense rank. Why would we ever want to do that? Just for videos like this. But here's the thing too. If you've ever been like someone who didn't know how to use analytical functions and you've been doing it the hard way all this time, you're probably going to recognize a lot of these steps and then you're going to be like, why didn't I know this ahead of time? Because you could have started your own software company and be driving a Lamborghini. Again, why would you want to drive a Lamborghini? Well, because you could afford one. Okay, so seriously though, just to rerun this, so here's what we're looking for. We know that when 2 people tie for first, dense rank goes 1, 1, and it doesn't skip. It goes right to 2 and then 3. And this one goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're looking for 1, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I could probably teach a monkey to click like that for me. Okay, so we're going to flip over here. And again, same thing we just looked at. Same thing. Okay, what I'm going to do is comment this out. A lot of this is similar from what we just looked at, so there's no reason to make you suffer through it. What I've done is I have all the temp tables all ready to drop themselves. I'm not going to select from each of these incremental tables because we saw this a few minutes ago. But just to review, we're creating the department table. It's just a lookup, just a quick review. And then we're creating our first temp table called temp. It's actually the second temp table. You get what I mean. And the select, of course, is commented out. Yay. And we have the third one where I'm just going to show you this. So, okay, let me run this. Now, what we have here, this is where we were since the last time. We have our ID we're going to use to loop through. We've got our department ID, our DID, our DID. But now the rank, I set this to 0. See, this, if you remember in the last one we looked at, I just set it arbitrarily to -1 because I like -1. I used to know -1. We went to school together. He was a pretty -1. That's why, nobody invites him anywhere anymore. Okay, but this one's 0 is so cool. 0 is like no stress, no anything really. Okay, so it's set to 0 because the math is going to be a little easier for us. So anyway, that's that's the only difference in this table. Okay, so now we're going to close this up. Thank you, select statement. And we're going to open up this stuff. And basically, it's very similar to what we did before, with a couple of exceptions. I have something called rank temp instead of department count. Okay, could have just left it like that, but it would have looked stupid. Here, what we're doing is, for rank temp, what we're doing is, give me the max rank, which starts off at 0. The first time this goes through, from temp, where the salary is greater than my salary. So basically, there is nothing greater than this. for the department that they're in. But what I also did is I did an is null on what gets returned from this. And let me explain something to you about is null. Is null is a little trickier than people may think. I could have put the is null around what the rank was, but sometimes that doesn't work because you have to understand the difference between a null value and a null record. If there's a null record, is null doesn't work. So, but this whole thing returns a value, and so it's going to be null the first time I run it. So I did the is null like this. Don't worry about that too much. You could always play that back if you're bored and listen to what I said and play around with it. But if you've been doing this for a long time in T-SQL, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, and this is just a select statement that I had to, when I was scratching my head a few minutes ago. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what's the biggest one higher than my salary? That's why I start this as 0. So when I increment it by 1 to get the final rank, it makes the first one 1, and then everything else falls into place after that. And see, this way, because we're doing it this way, we're not doing a count against how many, so that if 2 tie for first, we know the next one's 3. Here we're just adding 1. We're just incrementing it. So let's run this bad boy. Hey, look at this. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I should have been a singer. All right, now, did it really work? Well, it probably did. Hope it did. The kids at the orphanage are counting on us. They want to eat again this week. Yeah, last week we gave them soup and ramen noodles. Ramen noodles? Yeah, they fought over it. It was adorable. Okay, so let's run this against the dense rank. Da-da-da-da. And look at this. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you try. 1, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you can't see it. You can't see it. Don't believe me. Let's bring this up. Oh, it's taking so long. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da-da-da-da. We're superheroes. And again, just as is our custom, you could either get paid the big money and just do this because you're super smart, or you can feel smart and try to look smart and comment stuff out. Instead of doing that one line of code, you could have did this, and 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 this. If you really want to beat yourself up like that, don't do it on company time. Use analytical functions and beat yourself up on your own time. Just like take up skateboarding on a big hill. That'll do the same thing. It's just it won't affect your job unless you break your wrists, which will probably happen in the first half hour of skateboarding. Just saying. So anyway, there you guys have it. I hope you loved this. At some point, what I'll do is I'll put down in the details, I'll put links to shorter versions of this that don't include how would you do it without the analytical functions. But I just wanted you guys to really get the sense of how much time they save you. If you're trying to get a SQL job, please look at every video on analytical functions you can find. Take courses. I'll have one soon. I don't have one up yet, but when I do, I'll put a link at the bottom. There might even be a coupon for it, but we'll get to that. Listen, guys, thanks for watching, and if you made it this far, you get a t-shirt. Oh, wait, but not for me. Just kidding. All right, I wish you the best. Go write some queries. Thanks. Bye.